A woman weighing nearly 170 pounds, sitting in her armchair, was reduced to little more than 10 pounds of ash. Her skull was found among the remains, shrunken, according to accounts from the time, to the size of a teacup. And yet, the wall right beside her was barely scorched. That's the first thing that doesn't add up. Because to incinerate a human body to that degree, you need a crematorium furnace burning above 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. But there was no furnace here, just an armchair, a small apartment in Florida, and a room left almost untouched. By the end of this video, you'll understand what the FBI really concluded, and why, 75 years later, the case is still officially unsolved. Let's get to the facts. On the morning of July 2, 1951, in St. Petersburg, Florida, a resident named Pansy Carpenter went to deliver a telegram to her tenant, 67-year-old Mary Hardy Reeser. When she reached the apartment at 1200 Cherry Street, she found the metal doorknob too hot to touch, and she called the police. Let's go back a few hours. The evening before, around 9 o'clock, the widow Mary Reeser had said goodnight to her son Richard and her landlady Pansy Carpenter. As was her habit, she was reclining in her armchair when she was last seen. And here comes an unsettling detail. Around 5 in the morning, Mrs. Carpenter thought she smelled smoke. But since a water pump in the building had been overheating and giving off a similar odor, she switched it off and went back to bed. When they finally forced the door open, the scene defied all logic. Almost nothing was left of Mary Reeser. According to accounts, only her skull, part of her spine, and her left foot survived. The foot still inside a slipper. The rest was a small pile of ash where the armchair had stood. And now the impossible part, the chair she was sitting in had burned too, but apart from some soot and a couple of melted light switches, the rest of her home was essentially untouched. Plastic objects placed some distance from the fire had softened and lost their shape. Think about that for a second. Heat intense enough to consume a human body almost entirely, yet so contained that the bedding and furniture stayed clean and intact. How is that possible? The local police had no answer. St. Petersburg Police Chief J.R. Rigor was disturbed enough by the scene to send the evidence to the FBI. On July 7, 1951, he shipped a box of evidence to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover containing glass fragments found in the ashes, 6 small objects believed to be teeth, a piece of the carpet, and the shoe that had survived. And in his note, Chief Rigor wrote something that captures the whole mystery perfectly. He asked for any information or theory that could explain how a human body could be so destroyed while the fire stayed confined to such a small area, with so little damage to the building's structure, and the furniture in the room neither charred nor damaged by smoke. This is where the story became legend, because the newspapers began using a phrase that chills the blood: spontaneous human combustion. The idea that a person can burn from the inside with no outside spark at all, and Mary Reeser became, forever, the face of that phenomenon. But wait, before you believe that version, listen to what the experts determined. Because the FBI reached a conclusion far less supernatural and far more disturbing. The final report came in on July 31st. The FBI found no trace of accelerants. The greasy residue at the scene was body fat. Here's how they reconstructed it. The FBI stated that Reeser had been incinerated by what's called the Wick Effect. Since she was known to take sleeping pills, they proposed she had fallen unconscious while smoking and set fire to her nightclothes. They concluded that a dropped cigarette most likely ignited her rayon nightgown, and that combined with body fat acting as fuel, the fire burned slowly for several hours. And how does this Wick Effect work? It's as simple as it is chilling. The clothing acts as a wick, like in a candle. Only here, the wax is the body's own fat. Once the body starts to burn, the FBI wrote in its report, there is enough fat and other inflammable substances to permit varying degrees of destruction. That explains one thing. A fire that burns slow, low, and highly concentrated can destroy a body without spreading through the room. The FBI reasoned that the lack of damage to the furniture was because the heat from the burning body tended to rise, forming a layer of hot air that never reached the furniture at a lower level, something that would happen especially if the fire smoldered without flame instead of burning freely. Mary's own son, a respected physician, eventually accepted it. Interviewed in 1991 at 81, he said he had accepted the FBI's analysis as fact, and stated that the fire that consumed his mother's body was so powerful because it fed on her own body fat. Case closed then. No spontaneous combustion, no black magic. Or almost, because not everyone was convinced. Chief Reichert had called in a specialist physical anthropologist, Wilton M. Krogman, who was skeptical of the accidental death conclusion, though he later softened some of his views. According to Krogman's report, the state of the remains didn't match the heat that would have been needed for such destruction, and he disagreed with some of the FBI's findings. What baffled him most was that shrunken skull. In any fire hot enough to reduce a body to ash, Krogman said, the skull should have exploded. And yet there it was, intact, reduced in size, a detail that, according to accounts, made him utter a famous line. He said that if he'd lived in the Middle Ages, he'd have muttered something about witchcraft. Here we should be honest. Modern science does not recognize spontaneous human combustion as a real phenomenon. The investigation files themselves noted that there is absolutely no evidence, in any recorded case, that this kind of combustion happens without the body being ignited by some external means. The Wick Effect is documented and reproducible. Spontaneous combustion is not. But that doesn't erase the questions. It's unlikely the circumstances of Mary Reeser's death will ever be fully understood. The most famous case in St. Petersburg police history languishes in the files, closed but technically unsolved. No suspects, no fingerprints, nothing of a forensic nature to say definitively what reduced the widow to ash. And there's one final detail almost no one mentions. That telegram her landlady was carrying that morning. It was later discovered to be from a friend back home, confirming they had found her a place to stay for her summer visit, that she could go ahead and pack her bags. Mary Reeser wanted to leave Florida. Her friends in Pennsylvania later told investigators she was deeply unhappy, terribly lonely, that she hated the heat and humidity, and that she was ready to say goodbye to Florida. The news that she could finally go home arrived at her door a few hours too late. No one ever read it to her. The myth says Mary Reeser burned from the inside by some kind of magic. The reality, quieter, is probably worse. A cigarette, a few sleeping pills, and a body that consumed itself, slowly, over hours, in an apartment so quiet that no one woke up. And maybe that's the part that really keeps you up at night.